If you're looking for one of the easiest ways to gain some ground clearance and fit up to a 33-inch tire, the Supreme Suspension's 2-inch Pro Billet front strut spacer leveling kit will be a great addition to your 2004 or newer 2- or 4-wheel drive F-150, excluding those Raptor models. Now, this will be right up your alley if you're looking for an affordable solution to raise the front end of the truck for a more aggressive presence, better off-road capabilities, and of course, to upgrade to a larger set of tires. Not to mention, this kind of kit isn't that involved, so if you're happy with your factory suspension, if it's in good quality and you don't want to go replacing any parts, this is a great option to get the benefits of that extra height in the front without having to do a lot of work. Now, as you can see, this kit here is going to be pretty simple with 2 spacers for the front struts to eliminate that factory rake. It's also going to create more of an aggressive stance to the truck and, of course, gain some extra clearance if you are taking your truck off-road. Now, I would like to call out that the spacer here itself is going to measure in at about 1.5 inches, so it's not going to be a true 2 inches. However, with the suspension geometry and the spring compression after these are installed, that's what's going to give you that 2 inches of height in the front. When it comes to pairing a tire with this leveling kit, 33 inches is going to be the recommended size that's not going to require modification and fit very comfortably inside the wheel well. If you are taking a look at those 35s, they are going to rub and they are going to require modification to fit inside the wheel well, so I would definitely recommend sticking with a 33. Now, these will be made out of a CNC machine billet aluminum construction, being durable and able to last. These are also going to have a nice black anodized finish on top that will protect the aluminum underneath from any corrosion, so these are going to last a very long time on your truck. Now, this kit is also going to come with absolutely everything that you need to install it. Of course, these spacers here, in addition to all of the hardware needed for install. As far as price goes, this again is going to be super affordable as far as a lift kit or a leveling kit solution is concerned, at roughly $100 for the kit. Now, as far as other options on the site are concerned, kits usually range in price from what's included in them. So for this instance, this is going to come with just the spacers, and that's really what's going to make this so affordable. Now, what I will also say is that you're getting some really good quality out of this system and quality hardware in order to install it. So I think if you're looking for a simple way to get some added height and keep it on a budget, then this is going to be a great pick for you. Now, install is going to be a 3 out of 3 wrenches on the difficulty meter. It's taking you about 3 hours to get the job done. You will have to do a decent amount of disassembly up front to your factory suspension. So as long as you have the correct tools and the right setup, you should be looking at about 3 hours. Now, at this point, we can head over to the shop and check out a detailed breakdown of how to get these onto your F-150 at home. So that's going to wrap it up for me. Let's go ahead and get into it.
Tools required for this install include an air gun, an impact gun, a ratchet, a hammer, 15, 17, 18, and 21 millimeter ratcheting wrenches, 27 millimeter wrench, a swivel adapter, an 8 millimeter Allen socket, 8, 10, 15, 18, and 21 millimeter socket, a pry bar, and pole jacks or jack stands. What's up, guys? Today we're installing a leveling kit on our F-150, so let's get started. So to remove our front struts, the first thing we're going to do is remove our 2 brake line brackets from the knuckle and the frame, as well as our ABS bracket. So to remove our brake line brackets, we can grab a 10 millimeter socket to remove our bolt. And we'll pop our bracket out of the way and throw our bolt back in the hole so we don't lose it. We can do the same thing for the one on our knuckle. And then we can switch to our 8 millimeter socket for the bolt holding our ABS line in. Next, we can disconnect our tie rod end. We have a 21 millimeter nut, so we'll grab a 21 millimeter socket to loosen that up. And then we can take a hammer and strike the side of the knuckle here to pop our ball joint loose. And then we can finish removing the nut and pop our tie rod out of the way. Next, we can come down below our lower control arm. We have two 18mm nuts holding on our strut, and then on the other side, we have another 18mm nut that's holding our sway bar end link. So we'll take an 18mm socket to get these off. And now we can get the other nut for our strut removed, as well as the nut for our sway bar end link. Now at this point, you want to remove the nut for your sway bar end link on the other side so that you can raise your sway bar to get this out of the lower control arm. So now once you have your sway bar end link unbolted on both sides, you can take a pry bar to raise the end link out of the lower control arm. Next, we can come to the top of our strut and loosen up the three 15mm nuts. So I've got a 15mm ratcheting wrench that we'll use to loosen these up. Next, we're going to remove the bolts from our lower control arm pivot points. Now, these can slide back and forth, so to make sure that you get your alignment where it was before, you might want to take a marker and just make a mark where it's centered on the metal. So once you do that, we'll take a 21mm socket on our bolt side and a 27mm wrench on our nut side to loosen this up. And then we'll do that same thing on the other side. And now we can remove our two bolts. And drop our lower control arm down and out of our studs in the strut. So now we can go back up to the top of our strut tower and finish loosening up those nuts. Just be careful with that back nut, not to drop it into the pit of no return. And then once our nuts are removed, we can slide the strut out of place. So now our first step is to assemble our strut spacers. Now our studs on the top of our strut are offset, so when we put our spacer on, that's going to flip our strut around 180 degrees. Now our press bolts that go into the lower control arm have a slight angle to them, so since we're going to be rotating them 180 degrees for our spacer, we're going to be installing the driver's side on the passenger and the passenger on the driver's side. So now the first step to assembling our spacer is to install our studs. Now we have 3 threaded holes on here, which is where these studs are going to go. So we'll flip this over and start threading these in. And then we can take an 8mm Allen socket to tighten down our 3 bolts. So now we can slide our spacer onto our strut. Now, since the holes are offset, there's only one way this can go. And then we'll take our factory nuts and put those through the holes onto our factory studs using a 15mm socket. Now we're going to tighten these down by hand first so that we can put equal pressure on our spacer so it tightens down flat. And then we can grab our impact gun to tighten them the rest of the way down. And once you're done with one of your struts, you can do the same thing for the other strut, and we can get these installed on the truck. So now we're ready to install our strut. So we're gonna get our 3 studs through the mounting holes in our upper strut mount, and then we can get a flat washer, lock washer, and nut on top of our 3 studs. And now we can continue installing our flat washers, our lock washers, and our nuts onto our other studs. So now once we have our 2 studs lined up with the holes in the lower control arm, we can take a pry bar to pry up to get those studs into place. And then we can reinstall our 2 factory nuts on the bottom of our studs. Now once we have our strut loosely installed, we can grab a pole jack on each side of our lower control arm to raise this back up into place. Now you might have to take a pry bar, push forward to get your bolt through. And now we can do that same thing for the other side. And then once we have our bolts through, we can get our nuts on the other side. And then once we have these in place, we can take our 21mm socket and 27mm wrench to tighten this down. Next, we can grab an 18mm socket to tighten down our lower strut nuts. Next, we can go back up to the top of our strut tower and take a 17mm ratcheting wrench to tighten down our nuts. Next, we can reinstall our tie rod end. And our 21mm nut. And then we'll take a 21mm socket to tighten that down. Next, we can reinstall our brake line and ABS brackets. And then we can take a 10mm socket to tighten down our brake line brackets. And then we can switch to our 8mm socket for our ABS bracket. Now once you get to this point where all you have left is the sway bar end link to reinstall into the lower control arm, you're going to repeat that whole process on the other side, and then we can drop our sway bar end links into our holes at the same time on both sides to make it a little bit easier on ourselves. So we'll take a pry bar to pry down on our sway bar. And then we can go down, get our nut on, and tighten that down. So now we can reinstall our nut onto our sway bar end link, and then take an 18mm socket to tighten that down. And then we'll do that same thing on the other side. So that'll wrap up this review and install of the Supreme Suspensions 2-inch Pro Billet Front Strut Spacer Leveling Kit for your 2004 and newer 2-wheel drive or 4-wheel drive F-150, excluding the Raptor. Thank you for watching, and for all things F-150, keep it right here at AmericanTrucks.com.